right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his young brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect after pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Kakadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect and believers and listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. All right, and what we're going to get into this morning, first, dealing with, the devil, data over people, in which Esau, Edom, he has an ambition to set up his new world order. And within his new world order, he needs a lot of data, okay? And he needs a way to compute, this data. And his data, computing this data and making this new world order operational requires a lot of resources as far as fossil fuels, okay, and as far as water, all right? And this is why, he's pushing, the high gas prices, to get people off of, gasoline cars and get people on these electric vehicles, which will be more compatible, to, the new world order infrastructure. Those electric vehicles will give him far more control, okay, over, the movement of people than gas vehicles. And it frees up, okay, gas for him to fuel his data centers, okay? And then with the water, this is why he wants to depopulate. This is why he's causing certain diseases, he's letting loose, certain ticks, certain, mosquitoes that have these diseases and, parasites, and, destroying cattle, making people allergic to red meat, and, because he wants to depopulate, all right? So this devil needs to depopulate to free our resources for data, okay? Because this new world order functions off of data and the computing and the movement of data, okay? That's how he plays the Most High in his mind, through being able to collect data, all right, and to be able to compute the data with the AI, okay? So what we're seeing, the devil, he just, buying up all the land, he's hoarding all the resources, okay? And he's getting ready to bring crisis that's going to unalive a lot of people, okay? Because like I say, to him, it's data over people. You have this demon, Jeff Bezos. What did he say? All right, let's get this guy.
Damn, how selfish of me. Well, Jeff said you should stop drinking water because he needs it more than you eventually. Well, in a speech in Paris, Jeff Bezos said humans should consume less water because the public is not leaving enough water for AI data centers.
Damn. And that's how they feel. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos says human water consumption is limiting AI's potential. Okay, so the higher ups, are looking at you, common people, as in the way of AI's potential. Okay, and he speaks about AI's potential is the potential to govern over society. Okay, that's what he's speaking about. And that's what AI, is for. It's to govern over society. You see, I said they're allowing people to get familiar with it. Letting people use AI to, they can hire, AI agents for their job. People, have actual AI working for them as employees. AI employees. Okay, you have AI can assist you with particular, tools and jobs. Okay, well, that's that's not what AI is for. Just to get you familiar with it. Okay, and to get you to take a liking to it. Okay, so as they merge, society with AI, you won't have a problem. Most people, there's a lot of people that look at AI as a great thing. Now there's a resistance movement, of course. We go into it, you see. But then there's those in the professional world that this AI, does help. Okay, so what these devils, want to do, is to depopulate, which free up, more resources for AI to govern the remainder of the society, man. Okay, and this is the wicked agenda of the elites. Now, let's go from there. Let's go here to the book of Isaiah, chapter 5. All right, we go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 5, and I'm gonna get this in verse. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 8. I'm reading NLT. It says, "What sorrow, for you who buy up house after house and field after field, until everyone is evicted and you live alone in the land." Okay. And you look at how these devils are moving, especially with this entity BlackRock. Now, when this was spoken, this was speaking to Israelites. You had wealthy Israelites that were doing this, buying up land, buying up, estates, okay, to where they owned everything. They had a monopoly on the land. You're not supposed to do that. Okay, that's why even in our law, you have the Jubilee, the year of release, okay, to where debt was released, and lands were released back to its rightful owners. Okay. Because your land was your livelihood. Okay? See, we had a system that prevented, generational poverty. Esau, he wants a system that, all right, forwards generational poverty, okay, and generational wealth. So he wants to, these devils, they want a system of, they want to double down on the system that's in place where the money trickles to the wealth, and you have a permanent class of slaves, okay, and people that are impoverished, depending on a few wealthy. You see, Esau wants a system of dependence. That's how Esau gets to play the Most High, by creating these scenarios where you have to depend on him. And the New World Order will just be, because right now, there's a high dependency on the devil. Okay? People depend on the grid. People depend on the grocery store. People depend on gas prices, the energy prices. Okay? But he wants to take it to another level, with merging people with technology and this AI. Okay? He wants to create another level, a permanent dependency on him. Okay? On these few oligarch families. Okay? Having all, having ownership of everything. Okay? And then distribute it to the masses how they see fit. Okay? And this is what this technocracy is about. It's another level of dependency that's going to be created, man. Okay? So, like I say, Jake was doing this back then. Wicked Jake, the Lord sent Isaiah to cuss Jake out, because it was off. You see, Jake, and Jake learned that from the heathen, man. You see? But, that's what we're seeing happening now. Like I was saying earlier, go back to BlackRock. BlackRock is the biggest investors in the data centers. Now, when you hear BlackRock, you have to understand that's an entity of the elites. Okay, that's an investment firm of the elites. Okay, that goes and buys up, everything. Okay, when you go into who's buying, the most houses and turning these houses into rental houses, what is BlackRock? Okay, which goes back to the Rothschild. Okay, so when you hear BlackRock, you gotta think of the Rothschild, all right, banking family, man. Okay, that are buying everything up. Okay, to where people have nothing to own. Because home ownership is damn near impossible in America. That's damn near, you can scratch that off the list. Okay, in this society, in this economy, it's intentionally like that, man. Okay, because they want people to be desperate going into these times. Okay, and looking for them for a new way, to fix the chaos. Now, I got this video I want to get into. Just want to expound on it a little bit. So let's go here to this video. And show you, all right, that Esau, he's choosing data, okay, over people. Now, let's play this. And I'll put it in the, I'll go ahead and put it in the link. Shalom to you, beloved brothers, all right, and you sisters tuning in. But, here it is. So yeah, let's play this.
So to understand how a dead data center makes your rent worse, you have to start with one thing that everyone gets wrong about housing. Look, you can blame the usual stuff like greed or boomers or private equity, and sure, that's all some part of it, but underneath all of it is pretty simple. It's a supply problem. We're just not building enough homes. And the best way to show you what's quietly making that worse is through the eyes of the one guy whose entire job it is to build and fix these things. So let's say I'm a home building construction worker. Right now, business should be booming. We have a housing shortage of around 4 million, and so the whole country needs exactly what I build. But something is off, because the work I'm actually getting lately is pretty much exclusively all $1 million homes. I think that's the first thing you need to understand of what I'm about to tell you, because just like the rest of the economy, housing has also split into a K. The top is booming, and the bottom isn't. Because there's almost no affordable housing left in this country. Even with this...
So with this economy now, you damn near gotta be a millionaire to be a house home. Because he's saying that nothing but $1 million houses are being built. So in this current economy, you damn near got to be a millionaire, to own the house, man.
Years shortage, especially amongst the lower income population, somehow 2024 is on track to be the slowest year for new homes since 2019. Look, it's not because guys like me are lazy. It's just that all the money, the land, and the work has started flowing somewhere else. And look, I'm just a guy who's trying to make a living, so I follow the money. And that money is here. Because building these AI data centers pay more than anything I've ever seen show up on a job site. Turns out everything I learned building your house is the same exact skills that transfer over when building one of these. Remember this because I'm not the only one. It's exactly why for the first time in modern American history, data centers are pulling in as much private money as building every single home in the country combined. These were two lines that ran parallel for the last 60 years, with home building always far ahead, but now it's basically touching. And when data centers need the same land, power, materials, and workers like myself that before was building your house, what's clear is that we're fighting for the same pile of stuff. And only one side is walking away with it all. And this war, if you want to call call it that isn't a fair fight. In Bristow, Virginia, a home builder called Stanley Martin spent years putting together a piece of land and got it approved for 514 homes after paying $51 million. Then Amazon offered $700 million for the same land. So Stanley Martin did exactly what a rational person would do. They threw out the housing plan and sold that son of a back to Amazon. So when even the people whose literal job is to build homes would rather sell that land from under you, you can see who's clearly winning. But I haven't even told you the worst part, something that I have to find out the hard way. Because if data centers are going to buy up and use all this land and resources, at the very least you hope that they're building most of it. Well, a few months ago when I showed up to the data centers that I'm supposed to be building, it's been canceled. And when I packed up my stuff to then go to the next project 2 states over, it was again canceled. And when I called my other construction friends, what I found was a devastating pattern. Cancellations went from 2 data centers in 2023 to 6 in 2024 to 25 in 2025, and now it's even worse. In just the first 3 months of this year, 75 of them have been blocked or delayed. And experts are now predicting that only 10%.
And it shows you, according to prophecy, that the devil is in straits. You know, he's going backwards, man. You see, and this is why he's going to have to, you know, do something drastic, okay, to bring about this attempted new world order, okay? Because like I said, you have people, you know, showing up, all right, and the devil is running low on resources, man, because it takes, you know, these mainly those diesel turbines, you know, they're behind because it takes so long to build them, okay? And the diesel turbines, all right, production, and can't keep up with the data center, okay? And then where all this power going to come from, okay? So he's trying to build this thing out, all right, but he's limited. You see, and he's buying up all this land. Like I say, he's buying the land from contractors, from the developers. The guy paid $51 million, you know, to build a new subdivision. Well, Amazon comes and offers him $700 million. What is he going to do? He's going to sell it off. Okay, so instead of building new housing, okay, Esau's investing everything into this data. Okay, this new world order, this technocracy, this is Esau's pride and joy. You know, this is the crowning of his enterprise to get this technocracy up and running. Okay, well, what's that real quick, my brother? Get that in Matthew 6 and 19. Let me see real quick. Matthew 6 and 19. I think that's it. Let me see. Matthew 6 and 21, Bible shop. You know, the brother can post that. Yeah, Matthew 6 and 21. You see? Yeah, man, he saw, you know, he going to get with it. He going to get on the good foot, man. Okay? And that's why we want to see the devil get more impulsive, because he's frustrated. Okay? So, we'll listen more of this play.
Of the data centers being planned right now will actually ever get built. So what this reveals is something dark. What this means is the K-shaped split all along wasn't just luxury homes versus affordable ones, but increasingly a split between data centers versus housing. And that split is making an already worsening housing supply even worse. But hold on, I know what you're thinking. If a bunch of these projects are about to die, doesn't that mean that the land, the workers, and the money will finally circle back to housing, right? Well, to answer that, we first have to figure out why they're dying in the first place. But before we continue, one thing I need to be clear about is that I'm not against AI. If the goal is to use it as a tool to empower human creativity, not to replace it. And that's exactly where it actually leads to you having a better chance at a home. You first have to understand why data centers are getting canceled in the first place. And only then will you know if you're actually about to win. So the first reason is the grid. See, the thing about these data centers is that they take an insane amount of power, where like a single big one can pull more money than entire towns. In fact, it's gotten so bad that up to half the data centers that were supposed to come online this year are going to be delayed because the grid can't keep up. So the literal US power grid can't take it, then that's going to mean that the land is finally freeing up for homes. Right? Well, you think so, but the grid's just the start. Because the second reason is even more encouraging, considering that the smartest money in the room have quietly started backing out. Microsoft, one of the companies that kicked off this whole data center boom, walked away from at least 5 plots of land leases that it already had under contract. But it's not just land, they're also letting deals on more than 1 gigawatt of future power just expire. And the point is, you don't do that if you actually think you're gonna need these data centers. And where it gets a little bit scary too is that the banks that bankroll the whole thing are also starting to get cold feet too. They're quietly tightening the money and trying to dump the risk before they're going to be the ones left holding. And when the very people who invested in this whole boom starts backing away, surely that really think so. But there's a third reason, and it's the one that actually has me believing, because the people have had enough. In national polls, more Americans now say that they'd rather live next to a nuclear plant actually doing something about it. Because when data centers were first popping up, there wasn't much pushback because not many people really knew much about it. Besides, they were smart because they pitched it as, hey, we're going to create more jobs. And who could be against that? But after that kind of started getting discovered as bullshit, people started connecting the dots and they started organizing. In fact, there are now more than 833 opposition groups across 49 states, and that number has doubled in a single year. And all of them are fighting to protect their housing and the very land that's needed to build new homes for people like you. And that's exactly what happened in New Brunswick, New Jersey. So then this is it, right? Hundreds of residents packed into council meetings and killed the data center project cold. And as the result, that land is now headed for 600 new apartments, some of them affordable, plus space for new small businesses and even a little cute little park. So then this is it, right? Like, this is the blueprint. If the grid can't handle it, the money's starting to get pulled, and towns are actually organizing and killing these projects one by one and actually turning it into housing, then finally some good news. And finally, this might be a better chance for you to get housing next. Except, no. Because, sorry, this isn't rainbows and sunshine land. Because New Brunswick was clearly an exception. And it only worked because of two things. One, the data center project was relatively tiny, and the apartments were already drawn up and approved before this fight even started. And what's instead happening almost everywhere else is a different reality. And that killing the project was never the same thing as getting the land back. What I found is something even worse that happens when one of these things shows up in your town. And once you see it, you'll understand why data center cancellations were never going to save the housing crisis and more. So let's start with the land itself. The biggest data center project ever proposed in this country was the Digital Gateway in Virginia. And similar to New Brunswick, after a lot of backlash, the developer actually walked away in April of 2026. And just like New Brunswick,
and now they're building on reservations.
Right? No, it didn't. Because once a project like this dies, what I haven't mentioned yet is how it gets tied up in lawsuits and years of rezoning fights. And as long as that drags on, nothing can be built on the land at all. So just to put it in perspective, that's 2,100 acres of development that could have been housing, but the consequences are even worse for the people who already live there. Because once a data center circles a piece of land, Uncle Sam starts valuing your house like it's already been sold to Big Tech. One plot near the Digital Gateway got taxed as if the value of the land jumped from $1.6 million to over $25 million, all in a single year. And so it's no surprise why 17 different homeowners are now suing the county for being taxed out of homes that they already own for, again, a data center that's never even getting built. And that's exactly the trap. Once one of these things even touches a piece of land, no home builder can ever afford it again, whether it's built or not. And just like that, the land gets locked, but maybe you're thinking, fine, just go build somewhere else. Again, this goes back to the earlier problem in that the workers that would are also gone. Electricians are essential for building both houses and data centers, but when a data center project will pay them around $35 an hour versus $20 an hour for a home builder, who the hell do you think he's going to choose to work for? And not just the rate, when electrical work is almost half, sometimes 70% the cost of a data center, he's also going to get constant work that building houses won't be able to offer. And as you can imagine, this is one of the devastating effects that it's having on the housing supply. And this shortage of workers is what's also impacting the shortage of homes. A home builder in Texas said that it now takes them 2 extra months to finish a house just because so many electricians are now getting pulled for data center jobs. And I'm sorry to keep saying this, but it's only going to get worse. Because what we're already seeing is that even with these string of data center cancellations, these electricians also aren't returning back projects. Because just like traveling there, then electricians are also now traveling to chase the next project, even if it's in different states. So if the workers aren't coming back and the land is now a trap, then at least we can still count on the power of the people, right? Because with enough backlash, what's stopping us from bringing back housing too, just like how we've been able to cancel data centers, right? Well, here's the thing that nobody, myself included, haven't told you. What actually happens when these data centers is through all-out bans. Bans that almost always freezes way more than data centers. In Madison, the city admitted that its zoning code didn't even have a word for a data center, so to write new rules, they had to freeze new big developments across the board. And in Aurora, Colorado, data centers were legally counted as warehouses, so when they paused these data centers, they also accidentally paused every warehouse-sized project in the city, including housing. So the best way to think of this is like you're fumigating your entire house just to kill one nest. And sure, the bugs are now gone, but including the rooms that you actually wanted to live in. And not to...
And you people lose, man. You know, this is a society set up for the poor, okay, to lose. Okay? There's the rich, you know, they get to jump through these loopholes. Okay, they get to pay off, you know, local governments, federal governments.
And they're in corporate welfare.
Now, you
Look
have
that one up.
Like we say, this land, you know, here it is. Just when, you know, if, let's say Meta, you know, they want to buy some land. Like I say, that land that was 1.6 million. But after they, you know, announced a data center on their land, now their land is 25 million, and you have to pay taxes based on their property value increase, even if they don't even build a data center. You see, and then no contractors can come and buy their land because it's too high now. They can't afford their land anymore. to build new subdivisions. So this is the Lord packing up America, man. Okay, this is the Lord packing America up. All right, and at least they don't care about new housing because they finna get rid of people. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of empty houses in the time to come. You see, for a short time, and then this place gonna get nuked anyway. You see, so at the end of the day, everything that's being done is vain because 2 Peter chapter 3. Let's get that 2 Peter chapter 3 verses 10 through 12 as well. Okay, I'm gonna segue to this article and then get a couple of those precepts. You see, so let's get this. Right, Mr. Brother, you call hope for 144, Matthew 6 and 21. It said, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." And Esau treasures this new world order, this technocracy. Okay, and he's showing you what his mind is at by what he's investing in. He's going all out. Even if he don't have the resources, man, he's just going all out. Okay, he's going all out to build out the digital grid. Okay, the digital system and the digital infrastructure. Because his heart is into this technocracy, man. You see, and the devil thinks that if he can establish a technocracy, merge people with technology, that he can win. You see, that he can outdo the prophecy, man. But ultimately, he's fulfilling prophecy, man. Trying to pull this off is him fulfilling prophecy. You see, so this devil, was set up for failure from the beginning. Okay, and that's why I say, 1 Peter. All right, we're going to 1 Peter chapter 3, and verse 10 is the brother Yashima tribe of Judah. "But the days of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat." Okay, so what's going to do that? Nukes. So all this fight over data centers and over housing, it's not even going to matter soon, because the Lord is going to nuke the whole landmass of America, every data center, okay, every house, every subdivision, okay, every interstate, all of it, every bridge is going to be melted with fervent heat.
And you don't even have to guess how this war got started and where it got started from, right? As of, February, I believe it was 26, 28, somewhere around that, they started the war. A war that they can't stop. And that is World War III, the Third World War that cometh quickly. Well, more players are entering into this, right? Because there was just exchanges between Saudi Arabia and, of course, you also got Yemen in the fight. Saudi Arabia and Yemen, they exchanged fire. So there's more countries at war, and you already know about Lebanon being involved. Hey, man, they're trying to go against the axis of resistance, and they're trying to get the Gulf allies to help them. But they're getting hammered by Iranian retaliatory strikes. Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah Kadash. Double honors the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth to sincerity. And shout out to the Akims out there in 4 corners of the earth to claim its truth. Rakah the Yahweh, Rakah the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah Kadash, Brakatah. So, actually, for the record, to give credit where it's due, this is GMS Prisoners of Yahweh Shai, and it's his morning news and prophecy, data over people, and of course, Iran hitting hard, which we're getting into this. So, like everything else, though, got more here. So this is a collage of clips from GMS Lions of Fire channel. And this is a collage of clips of what's happening. There's so many of them that you can't even get them all. You can't even get them all in one video. So many things happening at the same time. And, I've been watching Young Turks and a whole bunch of them. Kim Iverson, of course. I mean, just so many of them getting into this. Midas Touch. I mean, all of them are getting into this, man. World War III is back in action. It never really stopped, but you're seeing more and more get involved. This will lead to World War III? Nah, it's already here. You're just going to see more and more players in this. And I remember Bashar al-Assad said this. He says, you should expect everything. I'm not the only player out here. This war was just going to keep getting bigger. And he was right. After the takedown of Bashar al-Assad, what did the Israeli state do? They wiped out Syria and started moving in more towards Lebanon and Syria after Bashar al-Assad had failed. And then they went and after Iran last year, and then leading up to World War III, right? That there's a lot more players. Most of all, Russia is moving troops in as well to protect both Lebanon and Iran, and even Turkey. Yeah, so they're going to be a guard unto them, and we're going to be watching the formation of this. So that's a strike against Iran.
We're hearing that is one of many sites that have been hit in Iran. That was a nuclear facility we're hearing in Bushehr. As we're hearing, the United States is absolutely lighting up Iran right now. Donald Trump said we're bombing the hell out of them, and the video footage that is pouring in, he was not exaggerating. Now, I'm going to be sharing with you the live feeds, and we're hearing that this is the third night in a row happening right now. It is 8:33 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Houston, Texas. It's July 13th, 2026. There is another round of attacks that is currently happening right now. As we speak, Donald Trump is absolutely obliterating Iran. Let's go ahead and take a look at the latest so that way you can see it for yourself. I've got a ton of video
Well,
footage and a ton of
up
articles we're
stuff.
going to be looking at. Let's take a
They
look
won't
here
be
coming up on the live feed from
obliterated
CBS.
so
As you
easily.
can see here, the latest. Trump orders more strikes on Iran after vowing to keep the Strait of Hormuz and charge fees. So we're hearing that he is saying we're going to be keeping it, we're going to be in charge of it. Our soldiers, our ships, our time, our money, our effort, our energy. As a result, we're going to be charging fees. We're going to be going through the live feeds here in just a bit. And in addition to that, let me know your thoughts. Are you concerned that this is going to be exploding into World War III? I've heard a lot of people saying they're concerned about this turning into a global conflict. If you think that this is the direction that we're going to be going, drop WW3 in the comments. But one step closer is take a look at this. You can see it for yourself coming out just in the past 2 hours. Donald Trump has just given Saudi Arabia's crown prince his backing for risky strikes on the Houthis in Yemen. So we are hearing that the Middle East is factioning. We are seeing people jumping in, and it is escalating. This is not just the United States, Iran, and its proxy groups, and Israel. We're hearing that other nations are getting sick of Iran, and more people are jumping in. If you think so, put WW3 in the comments. Now, if you think no, put no in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. But I'm going to be sharing with you the latest video footage, the articles coming out, a lot coming out today. Things are escalating significantly. And let me put this on the screen for you. Like I said, we've got a lot of video footage. Let me go ahead and share this with you real quick here. We heard from the president a couple of hours ago. And if you missed my live stream earlier, we heard the announcement that President Donald Trump is going to have a national address here unexpectedly Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Tomorrow night.
Sharing it with you. He's
Oh,
saying
wait,
he's
today is the day that it runs out, by the way.
Everybody right now is speculating things are popping off with the war, and he needs to talk to the United States.
Reserves
We will
run
see,
out
but
today.
let's take a look at what the president actually had to say earlier today.
So we have them in a position that they don't have any military. There's not a thing they can do about it. All they have is fake news, because they have the fake news would rather see us lose the war than win the war, which is really treasonous. In a certain way. So we're doing another very major attack tonight. They want to make a deal. They came back. We made a deal 2 days ago, and they want to make a deal. They've been negotiating for 47 years, but nobody's ever hit them militarily. We're hitting them very hard. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
The repeated adventurism and hostile actions by the United States to interfere in the management of the Strait of Hormuz have seriously endangered regional security, international trade, and the passage of oil tankers and commercial vessels. And unfortunately, the cooperation of some countries in the region has also increased the risk of the war spreading throughout the region. Accordingly, it is hereby announced that, following previous warnings, we will under no circumstances allow the United States to interfere in the management of the Strait of Hormuz, and we will not allow it to do so. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will deal forcefully with any disruption to the passage of commercial vessels and oil tankers by the invading and pirate U.S. military outside the route designated by Iran and without the permission of the armed forces, and the powerful actions of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian army in recent days are evidence of this claim. The leaders of the countries in the region are warned that any cooperation with the United States and any logistical support for that country's invading military will be regarded as war against Iran's sovereignty and national security. And if the war spreads across the region, the flames of war will engulf all the countries of the region. Responsibility for all insecurity and the expansion of the war in the region lies with the United States and the countries that cooperate with that country's criminal military.
Where does Trump go from here? I mean, obviously we restarted these strikes over the weekend, but do we really just need to bring the full hammer down and go back to full combat operations?
So a couple of things. One, on the sort of tapping us along, the Iranian regime claims that it was a mistake whenever the IRGC fired at these tankers. But as you pointed out, Bill, Bahidi is the head of the IRGC, and he has never complied with any of this. And he has been determined to continue to fire in the Strait and insists that the Iranians are going to keep control over the Strait. So I do think that we're going to see a series of increased military operations to degrade the Iranian ability to coerce through the Strait. That's why you see all of what Central Command is hitting, is all these coastal defenses, these one-way attack drones from the air and from the sea. And I think if this isn't going to, if it doesn't move quickly enough to degrade these capabilities, you may see an increased number of combat operations on mainland Iran.
You saw what just happened there?
I was on
So here we go, now. Land invasion of Iran.
Update us.
I love it. I'm excited to break this news for you because that's fits perfectly into the escalation trap. So I'll read out a post that Trump put just a few minutes ago.
Oh my goodness.
The Hormuz Strait is open and will remain open with or without Iran. That's fine. We are reinstating the Iranian blockade, so named because it is only stopping Iran's ships or customers from entering or leaving. All other countries will have fair and open use of the straits. The USA will be, from this point forward, known as the guardian of the Hormuz Strait. But as such, and as a matter of fairness, we will be reimbursed at the rate of 20% on all cargo shipped for any and all costs necessary to do the job of providing safety and security to this very volatile section of the world. The process and formation will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to the matter. So he's closed the Strait of Hormuz for Iranian ships and wants to charge all other ships 20%.
This is the opening of the Battle of Hormuz.
Yep.
That is what you are seeing. The Battle of Hormuz has started. Now, of course, when you date battles, there's always a date of when you started. But that post will likely go down in history as the opening post, the day when the Battle of Hormuz truly started.
So there you have it. The battle for Hormuz has begun. You know, as you have at World War II, you know, the Battle of Normandy, you have D-Day. Well, this where they're battling for Hormuz. But we know, like everything else, though, this war is going to expand. Russia's not going to allow Iran to fall. And most of all, though, you know, Iran's already winning the war anyways. You know, they can say that they don't have a military and all that, but then you see them retaliate. Saudi-led terrorists bomb Yemen's Sana'a airport, reigniting war with the Houthis, which are Yemen's government. The attack, claimed by Yemen's internationally recognized government, which is based in Saudi Arabia, it doesn't have an air force of its own, meaning the strikes were almost certainly launched by Saudi warplanes. So, like everything else, Saudi announced that Yemen forces targeted Saudi Arabia's Aba International Airport with a number of ballistic missiles and unmanned aerial vehicles. So you can see that this is very much so retaliation for the strikes against Yemen. Which, like everything else, so you know that it's been a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen for some time, sponsored by the U.S. and Israeli state.
في هذه اللحظات مشاهدينا الكرام كما تشاهدون غارات يومية عدوانية على مطار صنعاء الدولي إلى حد الآن بغارتين استهدفت مدرج الهبوط والإقلاع هنا كما تشاهدون. عدوانية متواصلة. شو 4 غارات. عدوانية متواصلة.
That looks like that was Yemen. So that's what happened to Yemen. And then, of course, Saudi Arabia was hit. Either that was Saudi Arabia. Either way, they're exchanging strikes. Okay, so yeah, this is it. Trump backs Saudi strikes against Yemen. The attack could signal the end of Riyadh's truce with the Houthis and broaden the U.S. war against Iran. U.S. President Trump gave Saudi Arabia the green light for a renewed military operation against Yemen. Axios reported, citing sources. Sana'a International Airport, which is controlled by Yemen, was struck on Monday as an Iranian aircraft reportedly carrying a Houthi delegation home from the future. Oh, okay. So they're accusing them of, they're accusing Iran of supplying them, right? So they're saying that they blew up stuff. Sounds like something the Israeli state would say. Well, Saudi Arabia is just another Israeli state. You know that they're totally in bed. They play both sides too, but right now they're in bed with the Israeli state and the U.S. Because, of course, that's where the petrodollar comes from. But we know eventually that these Arab states will turn against the U.S. very shortly. Especially when it comes to getting dragged into this war. But nonetheless, though, we're going to see a lot more. Now, Saudi Arabia is probably going to stay on the side of the U.S., just considering that's where the troops are anyways. So, hey, it's on all fronts. And I got more video here from South Front. Here we go.
Tensions are building up again in Yemen as the Houthis attempt, with the backing of Iran, to challenge the siege imposed by Saudi Arabia. The escalation began on July 3rd when Houthi air defenses engaged Saudi warplanes that attempted to prevent an Iranian civilian aircraft from landing at Sana'a International Airport. The plane eventually managed to land. It was carrying more than 200 stranded, injured, and sick passengers. This was the first publicly confirmed flight from the Islamic Republic to the Yemeni capital in roughly a decade. Following the incident, Houthi military spokesman Brigadier General Yahya Sari warned that the group could attack Saudi airports. He stressed that the unjust Saudi-American blockade on Yemen will not be tolerated indefinitely. Colonel Turki al-Malaki, a spokesman for the Saudi-led coalition, responded by saying that the kingdom will respond with unprecedented determination and force to any attempt to target the kingdom or violate Yemen's sovereignty. Late on the very same day, the Houthis raided positions of the Saudi-backed Yemeni government forces near the city of Hayes in the western Yemeni province of Hodeidah. At least 16 fighters from the Al-Zarq-Tihami brigades were killed in the unusual clashes, which continued well into July 4th. Tensions rose again on July 13th when a series of strikes hit Sana'a International Airport, preventing an Iranian plane from landing. After the strike, the plane diverted from Sana'a and landed at Hodeidah International Airport, also controlled by the Houthis. Saudi Arabia did not claim responsibility for the strikes, but the defense ministry of the Yemeni government that it backs did so. Still, the Houthis held the kingdom responsible. The group's spokesman said that air defenses fired at Saudi warplanes that carried out the strikes. Video footage further confirmed that the strikes were carried out using British-French Storm Shadow air-launched cruise missiles, which are known to be in service with the Royal Saudi Air Force. Reports that emerged later revealed that United States President Donald Trump had encouraged Saudi Arabia to launch the strikes. The Houthis responded quickly, launching a number of missiles and drones at Abha International Airport in the southern Saudi province of Asir. Saudi Arabia acknowledged the attack. Operations at the airport were suspended following reports of blasts. Later, a Saudi-led coalition spokesman announced the interception of ballistic missiles. The ceasefire in Yemen, brokered by the United Nations in 2022, is now facing its biggest challenge yet. Any response by Saudi Arabia is guaranteed to provoke a more serious retaliation by the Houthis, or could easily reignite in the country. This would also further complicate the conflict with Iran in the Persian Gulf, which is slowly heating up again.
So, like everything else, you can see that more players are being dragged into the war. U.S. restricts direct return of U.S. citizens from the Congo over Ebola hoax. So, like everything else, though, here we go again, the big scare, Ebola. Non-citizens already have been prohibited from entering the U.S. within 21 days of being in Congo, Uganda, and South Sudan. And now the Trump administration has begun using federal authority to bar U.S. citizens who have been in Congo from entering the U.S. until they spend at least 3 weeks in another country, officials said on the 14th of July. Americans who are in Congo or have recently been there will only be allowed to board a commercial flight to the U.S. if they have spent at least 21 days outside the Central African country, officials said. So, like everything else, though, looks like they got another pandemic, But wait, there's more. Now we're going to look at some more footage of Iran, because that's pretty much it, man. This channel here I recommend subscribing to. It's called The Mexican Family, which it's a Jake telling the news. Hey, I'd rather hear from Jake telling the news and listen to Esau, because he's a goddamn liar, at least. And I always look at foreign news anyways, just simply because you can't trust anything Esau says. But I do say, though, that Stu Peters and, Kim Iverson and a few others there, really actually go in on Esau, too. So you got whistleblowers there as well. But nonetheless, though, this is what's going on, with the war, which you already know is reignited. So I have two from this channel.
Gracias por unirse a nuestra transmisión en donde vamos a ver lo que está sucediendo en estos momentos en el estrecho de Hormuz, porque Estados Unidos ha lanzado un bombardeo.
Let me get it in English, Salakia. I have to watch this, okay. So I think that I can, nope. Salakia, give me a second here.
Let's start with what's happening in the Middle East, because Iran has just launched a brutal attack against U.S. forces in the Middle East, and it did so, friends, in such a lightning-fast manner, with such certainty, with such speed, that the Pentagon's defense systems didn't even have time to react. They were expecting the traditional Iranian attack. And, well, now we see how it has evolved. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard a massive barrage of ballistic missiles. We saw kamikaze drones that proceeded to strike. Take careful note at command centers. They wiped out the anti-aircraft defense systems and raised the ammunition depots at the U.S. bases that they had previously located. They were taken completely by surprise. They destroyed hangars of two fighter jets, at least state-of-the-art radars that had just been installed, and left out a significant amount of U.S. military equipment that had just been deployed in the region to replace what Iran had bombed the last conflict before the ceasefire And this, friends, is not just another traditional Iranian attack. This was a devastating blow that demonstrates that Iran has the capacity to reach US bases wherever they may be. And more importantly, they now also have the intelligence to know exactly where to strike, where the United States is now storing its ammunition, where it is relocating its radars, its defense systems, its anti-air, its defense systems, and is causing the maximum possible damage in the shortest time, I am Victor, and this is TMF News. And in this broadcast, we're going to break down in detail, friends, how this Iranian counteroffensive unfolded, what they actually destroyed, how many targets they hit, and above all, because this escalation has Washington's military strategists is scratching their heads because they still can't figure out what the hell happened. How could they have been surprised like this? And how could they have launched an attack with this level of preparation? China's hand is more than present here. All of this smells too much like China in Iran, and of course like Chinese support. But let's get into the details, friends, because we're talking about a response that, I repeat, it took everyone in the Pentagon by surprise. But that is also already reconfiguring the geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East in a matter of hours. And let's get started with what we saw on yesterday, in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard attacking 3 commercial ships sail through the Mouse Strait. That was act number 1 of this story. The most affected of these was the Cypriot flagship MBG-FS Galaxy, which we reported on yesterday. Yes, a container ship that suffered serious damage to its engine room and lost a crew member. This was confirmed by the United States Central Command. The attack occurred when the ship was trying to transit oil that the Iranians considered unauthorized. And Tehran came out to say that these warning shots were because the ship had ignored repeated instructions because the United States wanted to open the Dortmund Strait by force. This happened, by the way, hours after Donald Trump came out to say, as of now, the Strait of Hormuz is ready and open to everyone. Pass him a very irresponsible statement because he put merchant and civilian ships that were not part of this conflict at risk, many of whom, naively trusting Donald Trump's word, a serious mistake, decided to cross. Oh, but Washington, well, once again, underestimated Iran's capabilities. We saw Trump order a massive response after this. See, this is where everything evolved. We saw 3 consecutive nights before this, and up to today, bombings on Iranian territory that hit more than 300 military targets. This included air defense systems. We saw coastal radar stations. United States bombed Iranian missile launchers, and well, the United States says it also destroyed more than 60 small Iranian naval boats. And it's true. The bad thing for the United States is that Iran has these like swarms of ants, right? He's only 60. And the is where the story, my friends, gets really interesting because of when not just talking about the brutality of the US attack. Now comes the Iranian response, which was not what the Pentagon expected. They already had their plan. We're going to attack Iran. We're going to bomb these places. And we already know that Iran is synonymous with drones, and then come the missiles, period. That's it. Ferris would say, no problem, I'll pay for it, right? Well, what happened is that instead of retreating, the Iranians, well, the revolution, are the new network of missiles and drones on multiple fronts that they already had deployed. And that were not those locations that the United States attacked, which somehow they thought had reduced Iran's counteroffensive capacity, and, well, they did not reduce it. This counteroffensive capacity remained intact. Well, to the surprise of the Americans, well, those attacks occurred simultaneously, and we saw Iran simultaneously attacking in the last hours the bases in Jordan, the new systems that the United States had deployed in Qatar. For the first time, I was telling you, I saw an attack on Qatar. The United States had relocated ammunition depots in Oman, in Qatar, in Bahrain, and it turns out that Iran have been spying on them. That's why I'm telling you, surely through Chinese intelligence, they already knew where they were. They already knew what location, and the coordination was so perfect, friends, that when the anti-aircraft systems they started to sound, because it turns out that the missiles were hitting the command centers and aircraft hangars, and those in Jordan, for example, the Prince Hassan Air Base, which the United States would have been rebuilding. The joints during the ceasefire was hit again. They blew up a command and control center and bombed the hangar of the few MQ-9 Reaper drones that they still have there, which I repeat, are drones that are no longer manufactured, that are discontinued, the Jordanian army confirmed that its air defense is shot down for missiles that entered its airspace. But that, my friends, did not prevent the base from suffering considerable damage. We also saw in Qatar, for example, the Al Udeid Air Base, which is one of the most important facilities that the United States has in the Gulf last night. It received new impacts that, according to reports in various media, damaged the command center, Deile. There is also damage to the maintenance workshops of the combat aircraft What is known, according to sources in the region, is that 3 people were injured by shrapnel. As we all know, when it comes to these types of situations, the United States never accepts that there are casualties, much less fatalities, right?
And they're not even honest with you about how many there were. But wait, there's more, because it goes into this some more, But make no mistake about it. The Battle of the Strait of Hormuz has begun. And that's what you could call it, though.
In our broadcast, where we are going to look at what is happening right now in the Strait of Hormuz, because the United States has launched a massive bombing, a brutal large-scale bombardment in southern Lebanon. What U.S. forces are currently trying to do is take the Strait of Hormuz by storm. That is what they want to do. That is what is behind these bombings. Now, before I give you the details on how the bombing is evolving at this moment, let me tell you something very important. What a surprise as to why Donald Trump wants to take control of the Strait of Hormuz. This guy has gone crazy. Some would tell me that in normal situations, Trump wants to take Hormuz to open global trade transit so oil flows freely and is free, and so that Iran doesn't put a tariff on it. The thing is, Trump, friends, and we will see this later, just made an impressive shift in his discourse. Do you know what he said? That the United States is now the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz, and under this new rule, all vessels passing through Hormuz must pay the United States 20% the value of their goods. 20%. That is the statement Donald Trump made just a few moments ago, friends. It's incredible that Marco Rubio and JB complained that Iran was supposedly an ogre because it wanted to charge a percentage that was around 2% or 1% of the cargo. And now we see how the United States, through Donald Trump, is saying that from this moment on, whoever wants to cross Hormuz has to pay the United States 20% of the value of what that ship is carrying. And while he is doing this, he is already carrying out this plan to launch a large-scale attack, explosions in southern Iran, which is what we are seeing. We are talking about the cities of Bushehr and Bandar Abbas. Also remember that in Bushehr there's a nuclear power plant that the United States would be attacking at this very moment, very close to there. In any case, Bushehr and Bandar Abbas, 2 strategic areas that concentrate infrastructure that is very sensitive to the Iranian government, and these are explosions that, according to various local media such as Fars Tasnim,
which you saw that explosion,
and I am also providing some other sources are already reporting it, because this is information that is fully corroborated by various media that say these detonations are being heard. Even residents of Chognad, one of the towns near Bushehr, have already taken to the streets without knowing exactly what is happening. In Bandar Abbas, there are reports right now of at least 5 massive detonations occurring to the west of the city, exactly where Iran's main naval and logistics center in the Persian Gulf is located. And that is where the IRGC concentrates part of its critical military infrastructure. And well, for now, CENTCOM, the Central Command, has already come out to confirm this information, stating that they have indeed claimed responsibility for these attacks. It is the United States that is behind these launches that are being reported at this moment. A military operation that, as of this broadcast, has lasted more than 5 hours, and which, according to official statements, is directed against coastal defense systems, military sites, missiles, and drones against Iran's maritime capabilities, which the U.S. is currently trying to take down to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz. And astonishingly, starting today, charge any ship passing through Hormuz 20% of its cargo, which Mr. Donald Trump says will now belong to the United States. The level of extortion is incredible. Whether it's oil, components, electronics, whatever it may be, folks, 20%, because Trump now claims to be the owner of Hormuz. Friends, I'm Victor, this is TMF News, and in this broadcast, we are...
So, there you have it, though. Like everything else, though. It's a battle over Hormuz and who has control over it. And it's not about he's not saying he's going after nuclear, trying to reduce Iran's nuclear capability, is he? No, he's going after the Strait of Hormuz because that's where the world trade is, and that's what this war has been about. The Greater Israel Project, controlling all the oil, having all the oil. Iranian Parliament National Security Committee says U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding is no longer valid. Okay, that's official. It's over, because now you've heard from Iran saying it's over, you've heard from Trump saying it's over. So it's official. It's over. There is no memorandum of understanding. We knew it was all fake to begin with. Iran's Parliamentary National Security and Foreign Policy Committee said on Tuesday that the Memorandum of Understanding is no longer valid, accusing GC of violating commitments under the agreement. He claimed the U.S. had failed to uphold its commitments on issues including Lebanon, sanctions relief, the nuclear file, compensation mechanisms, and of course the Strait. So like everything else though, we know that they've officially said this is the reason why it's over. Trump tells Congress that Iran war is back on. The new announcement gives the administration another 60 days before it needs congressional approval, according to D.C. So 2 more months, that makes it September, this was published, so September 13. Really? Yeah. I believe he's going to push it till about that time. U.S. President Trump formally told Congress that D.C. had resumed what he described as limited defense strikes against Iran. Yeah, defense my ass. So, like everything else though, under the War Powers Resolution of 1973, the President must withdraw American terrorists after 60 days unless Congress authorizes the war. So he's thinking, okay, I'll just go another 60 days. Then I'll back off. Then I'll go another 60 days. Then I'll back off. That seems to be the teeter-totter effect that he thinks they have. Unless he's actually going to try to get congressional approval. Yeah, we'll see how that works out. So that's his strategies. U.S. strikes hit Iran for third night, killing 3 people. That was published on, well, let's see here. Trump says he's insisted 20% levy on travel through the Strait, as the previous video said. At least 3 people now have been killed. Alright, this is yesterday's. As the U.S. hit Iran for the 3rd night in a row, U.S. released footage for the attacks after saying its forces completed a new wave of strikes against Iran. In addition, President Trump said he would reinstate blockade of Iranian shipping in the Gulf on Tuesday afternoon. He said the Strait of Hormuz would remain open with or without Iran, but said the U.S. will start charging fees. Yeah, which is a 20% fee would be levied for all costs necessary to provide security and safety for the vessels. So, more tariffs, right? Don't you love them tariffs? It's hilarious how hated the U.S. is now. Iran army to U.S. Strait of Hormuz will never be reopened through war and aggression. So they're just reiterating it'll never be reopened as long as they keep on threatening and attacking. The aggressive and corrupt president of the U.S. must learn to respect international laws, the rights of nations, and the dignity of peoples. That will never happen, but that's what they're saying. As we have previously stated, the Strait will never be reopened through war, hostility, or acts of aggression by the U.S. Brigadier General said on Monday, addressing a public gathering. So, like everything else though, and we already know that they've stated that the Memorandum of Understanding is null and void. IRGC vows not a drop of oil and gas will be exported from the region amid sustained cross-Gulf fighting. Iran, U.S. fighting in sustained but tit-for-tat space with new reported strikes across the Gulf. Trump declares full blockade on Iranian ports. Trump drops 20% transit fee plan. Multiple tankers attacks over past day. And of course, we know that the regional conflict expands with Houthi missiles against Saudi Arabia for the attacks on Sana'a airport. So, yeah, this war has definitely expanded. Iran vows to fight for the Strait until their last breath, as it reiterates for U.S. strikes. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has launched missile and drone attacks against multiple U.S. facilities in West Asia after American terrorists conducted another wave of strikes against the Islamic Republic. Escalation comes as the two sides fight for control over the Strait, which accounts for 20% of global crude oil trade. So it's very important for the U.S. to take it. I don't think they're going to get it so easily. And even if they manage to, Russia's going to rearm and going to help Iran to get it back, even if they did manage to get it from Iran. Iranian military spokesman insisted that the key waterway will never be reopened through American acts of hostility. The country forces stand firm until the last breath, protecting Tehran's rights to the Strait, he said. Why the U.S.-Iran escalation over Hormuz will not be the last? Well, it's very important, but here are the key points. D.C. cannot accept Iranian control of the strait, and Tehran will not surrender it. A deadlock that points to years of confrontation. Well, this won't be that long, because we know this Third World War is coming quickly. There was an optimism when the U.S. and Iran signed the Memorandum of Understanding. But the 14-point document was hastily put together and includes nebulous articles open to interpretation. Article 5 calls on Iran to make arrangements for safe passage of commercial vessels in the strait during the 60-day negotiated window, but the U.S. wasn't honoring any of it. So why should Iran honor it? Iran interpreted the article as giving it right to direct traffic, including ships, to take only routes that it has approved as safe. Well, yeah, that would, it's pretty much, you have to get approval, right? I mean, that's what a toll is, but they're not asking for money. They're just giving you safe passage. They're giving you an escort through. Why wouldn't you want an escort through, right? The U.S. intervention appears to be not so subtle attempt to wrestle control over Hormuz away from Iran. Both sides have blamed each other for violating the terms of the MOU, which it's null and void anyways. Iran says it destroyed the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain and targeted bases in Kuwait and Jordan. IRGC said on Wednesday it carried out attacks against U.S. sites and facilities in Bahrain and Kuwait, describing the operation as response to what it called American aggression. IRGC claimed it had destroyed the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet, as well as field facilities and military equipment in Bahrain. It also targeted the U.S. military logistics support at Abdullah Port in Kuwait, claiming it had set the site on fire and destroyed it. Iranian state media, quoting the country's military, also reported the U.S. facilities at Al Aqsa Air Base in Jordan had been targeted for the second time. So, the retaliations are getting much more large. So I'm going to pull out a few scriptures before I close this out. So I'm just going to get this out of the book of Nahum, as it talks about that day of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai, and about how he's been very patient for a very long time. That's why Esau's been allowed to get away with what he could for as long as he could, but everything's changing. You can see that everything's turning against him. Nahum chapter 1 verse 3, and it reads, "The Most High Yahweh is slow to anger and great in power, and he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished." That's a promise. It's a promise to us that have been suffering under Esau Edom. Fuck, even the Edomites are suffering under Esau's rulership. He doesn't give a damn about his people. That's more than obvious. It's the Most High that's doing that, putting this fierce king and cruel Lord against him. But nonetheless, though, now all these whiners, right? Because they couldn't even stand a season of bad shit, and even though we've been dealing with it a lot longer, they're just like, wham, wham, wham. Well, they're about to experience something that they'll and they're just going to see nothing but the Most High being against them in every way possible. Their government's against them. Even though everything was rigged in their favor, everything's against them. Everything they do is not prosperous, but is doomed to fail. Most High has his way in the whirlwind and in the storm. And the clouds are the dust beneath his feet. So the storm and tempest is coming against Esau Edom in a major way. He rebukes the sea and dries it up. He dries up all rivers, illustrating his judgment. And that's what's about to happen. See, these data centers that they're building is draining up all the water and all the oil. Bashan on the east and Mount Carmel on the west wither, and in the north the blossoms of Lebanon fade. The mountains quake before him, and the hills melt away. Indeed, the earth is shaken by his presence. Yes, the world and all that dwell in it. So that is by the way of this war that's coming. Who can stand before his indignation, his great wrath, which is ultimately this destruction that's coming? And who can stand up and endure the fierceness of his anger? His wrath is poured out like fire, and the rocks are destroyed by him. And we're going to see a lot of destruction. because you're seeing that Iran has bigger and bigger missiles coming, and they are beginning to use some of their hypersonic missiles as well. You'll see a lot before the nuclear missiles are shot off. The Most High is good, a strength and stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows, he recognizes, cares for, and understands fully those who take refuge and trust in him. And that's talking about the elect, because that's what we're doing. But with an overwhelming flood of judgment through invading armies. So like everything else, so Russia's going to come in like a cloud, invading and taking everything away from Esau. He will make a complete destruction of its sight and will pursue his enemies into darkness. So like everything else though, judgment is coming. Like tangled thorn branches gathered for fuel, and like drowned in drunkenness, the people of Nineveh are consumed through fire, like stubble completely withered and dry in the day of the Lord's wrath. So like everything else though, he's about to destroy Babylon the Great, and that's where we're at, So things are going to heat up very, very soon. As you know, everyone's fighting there, and it's coming up to that valley of Jehoshaphat. But I just wanted to get it from the book of Nineveh, or book of Nineveh. Yeah, that's another term for Esau, Edom, by the way. Another term for Babylon when reading these prophecies. The book of Nahum is where I wanted to get it from. So hopefully this has all been edifying. Then I will say, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Wa Abab Baal. Brakatam, Jehovah elect, and yeah, today is supposed to be the day that the reserve fuel is out, according to Trump. So it's going to be very interesting times here on out. Shalom.